right. Hi, Vinny. Hi, Bill.
Hey, Rich.
Get started here in a moment. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, to the audience, thank you for tuning in. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. We appreciate you joining us today for a webinar on the topic of the ServiceNow digital worker. And it's a case study on how Dexian has utilized the digital worker to achieve more efficiency and scale. Um, While people are rolling in, I'll just kind of cover a little bit of housekeeping. We're using the Zoom webinar platform today. We will be addressing questions at the end of the webinar. So there's a Q&A panel that if you're joining, you should have access to either via Zoom desktop or on the web. Please feel free to submit questions along the way, and we'll do our best to get to those questions at the end of the webinar. I apologize for my voice. I'm coming off a bit of a cold, so I may mute and cough occasionally, but I'm very excited to be here with you today. We're going to be covering the following topics from an agenda perspective. We'll do quick introductions. I'll give Vinny and Bill a chance to introduce themselves. We'll then dive into an overview of the ServiceNow digital worker and kind of why we built this. We'll spend the bulk of our time showing actual live demonstrations of the solution. Bill and Vinny can talk about how they've leveraged the tool and hope to leverage it even more in the future in various areas. I'll also cover a little bit of the digital worker architecture, how it works, the security aspects, and roadmap, and then we'll talk about next steps and answer any questions. So that's a little bit about kind of what the agenda is. Quick introductions. My name is Richard Mendis. I'm the Chief Marketing and Strategy Officer at Bytemethod.ai. We are a subsidiary of Dexian that was formed just over a year ago to help Dexian's customers take advantage of agentic AI and related technologies, improve their operational efficiency and things like that. One of the areas that we dove into when we formed this subsidiary is we worked with our ServiceNow practice, who has lots of experience implementing ServiceNow across various customers, to figure out where we could help improve their efficiency as they help some of our largest customers implement and maintain ServiceNow. So we, in the process of doing that, built a digital worker, and we're very excited that we now have lots of interest and use of that digital worker across many of our customers. And one of our most important customers is our own internal ServiceNow team that manages ServiceNow on behalf of Dexian. And those folks are primarily Vinny and Bill. So I'll let them introduce themselves.
Thanks, Rich. My name is Vinny Devoe. I'm the Vice President of Information Technology at Dexian. I've been with Dexian coming up on 24 years. I'm responsible for leading our IT strategy and digital transformation. My background is in enterprise IT, service management, and applications. So I have a lot of experience working with ServiceNow, implemented ServiceNow 2.5 years ago for Dexian, coming off of old legacy ITSM platform. Um, big part of this webinar that I'm excited about is talking specifically about AI. AI, I'm sure for all of you, is top of mind and something you're looking at and scaling across your enterprise. We specifically are looking to expand our offering and our services within ServiceNow, and Bytemethod has come in and really helped us with this digital worker. And I'm excited to share a little bit about how the digital worker has solved a lot of our challenges that we currently have with the platform. So nice to meet you all. I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Hey everybody, my name is Bill Jansen. I am the Director of IT Program Management here at Dexian. I've been with the company for just over 2 years now. I am the ServiceNow platform owner, and I work for Vinny. I also run change management, demand management, knowledge management, and a portfolio of IT projects within ServiceNow. I'm happy to be here.
Great. Thanks, Vinny and Bill. I appreciate you guys being here. Vinny, why don't you give the audience a little bit of a background on Dexian? I think set some context as to maybe the scope of the ServiceNow, kind of what they're with the team, what they're supporting.
Sure. Dexian is a leading provider in staffing, IT, and workforce solutions. We have about 10,000 employees worldwide with over 70 plus locations. So with a large presence in the US, India, and Brazil. Dexian's been around for about 30 years and is the second largest minority-owned staffing company in the US. Our offerings is that, as you can see in this slide, we're at global scale. So from a IT service management standpoint, we support the organization globally with a very, very small team. So this is a quick layout of where we're located. As you can see, we also have a presence onshore, offshore, and nearshore from an offering and a product perspective. All right, so I actually wanted to share with you guys a little bit around what are our current ServiceNow challenges that we, as an organization, struggle with on a day-to-day basis. So first off, we run a very lean ITSM team, primarily offshore. And as Bill mentioned, he oversees that team. And so with that, there's a lot of demand that comes in from the business. And because we're not able to scale that team, we really look to optimize and really work through how do we automate and make things much easier and be able to provide value of the ServiceNow platform to our field as quickly as possible. The other thing, because we run a lean ITSM team, our budget for specifically around around ServiceNow is pretty limited as far as bringing in partners. So what we found with the digital worker is allowed us to scale at a much faster pace without having to ramp up external partners on the platform quickly. The other piece of this is we have a lot of ongoing maintenance, development. Specifically, could be an example could be around catalog items. When those things hit our demand or hit a request hits our demand, then we have to work through those, and those can take a lot of time, and they take up a lot of time of our resources, and there's a cost associated with that. The other piece too is when the business is looking to implement new modules within the platform. So let me give you a little bit of overview of our ServiceNow instance. We currently run ITSM. We run SPM. We also run the legal service delivery module as well. So to implement those individually takes a lot of time. We've actually had to reach out to partners in the past to help us implement those. And it's even when you're going from maybe one tier of a license to another. So if you're on SPM standard or ITSM standard and going to pro, there's typically you want to bring in a higher level of expertise to help you implement those modules in order to take full advantage of the capabilities and the features that they offer.
Thanks. And there was one question that came in, maybe Bill or Vinny, you can address. Lean means different things to different people. So how lean are we talking about in this case?
So I have a team of 4 developers and administrators,
Yep.
total 5 of us.
So 5 in total, 4 offshore. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So a little bit about Bytemethod before we jump into this. As I mentioned, we are a subsidiary of Dexian that focuses on implementing AI solutions. And one of the first things we did when we came into the organization is work with our internal groups to figure out where we can apply AI internally. One of those groups was our ServiceNow practice. And so we worked with them to understand where the bottlenecks are in ServiceNow implementations, where our customers are spending a lot of time and money with us, both for greenfield implementations as well as brownfield or kind of maintenance. And we identified, when you drill down into the details, certainly Vinny mentioned some of the high-level kind of challenges his team faces. When you drill into the details, inevitably what you end up finding is that there are a common set of tasks within ServiceNow that all customers, regardless of industry or size, are faced with. So for example, building and developing catalog items and maintaining those can take up a fair bit of time. Ensuring the health and recency of the knowledge articles to defray tickets is critical. There's a lot of time spent interpreting and trying to analyze data and get real insights from your incidents and tickets that are coming in. Being able to figure out, what the license utilization is of your users within the platform. CMDB health is something that comes up quite often, being able to kind of understand and remediate and get insights into duplicate, stale, and orphan CIs. And there are more areas, certainly, but these are some of the ones that have come up with many customers. And I think you'll see as we get into the demo and details, Bill and Vinny will highlight some of these areas where we saw some overlap in terms of what their challenges were. And we'll highlight, in the next few webinars, we'll get into more details of these various different areas that the digital worker helps with, but certainly these are some of the more common ones. So with that backdrop, we challenged our AI team to go and look at what ServiceNow themselves are doing because they're investing in solutions like Now Assist. They made an acquisition called MoveWorks, which is now called EmployeeWorks. If you were at the Knowledge event, as we were a few weeks ago, you saw lots of talk about the AI control tower and auto and all of those things. So there's significant investment being made on ServiceNow's own behalf in terms of AI. But when looking at that, we still found some gaps in areas where we felt there was an opportunity to build a digital worker that is not necessarily a general purpose solution, but truly understands a customer's specific requirements and best practices and challenges, and even down to the requirements formats. And so we'll take a look as we dive into the demo of how we've applied this digital worker to help our customers, including Vinny and Bill in Dexian, get more out of their ServiceNow investment. Okay. All right. So with that, we're going to dive in and get into the heart of this. So the first area we'll look at is around catalog item development. We've talked about this a lot. You've heard Vinny and Bill mention it. This can take several hours or days. In some cases, we've heard customers say it actually takes, 1 to 2 weeks, depending on the complexity, where once you've gathered the requirements of a catalog item, you now have to hand that over to a developer who needs to interpret those requirements, start creating the variables and form fields, building out that workflow, potentially creating additional scripts and SLAs. And ultimately, this can take anywhere from, several hours to, in some cases, several days. Bill, what's been your experience in terms of, Dexian's catalog item development efforts?
Right now we have just over 150 different catalog items. Like I said, with a team of 4 and running the ServiceNow platform, most of my work is built around building catalog items for our fulfillers to help our internal customers. So we spend a lot of time building out catalog items and redoing catalog items as needs change. So for us, since we've been using the ServiceNow catalog builder, it's kind of been a game changer for us. Because when we go into the requirements gathering phase, we can fill out the template just like we did before, but then we can just activate the catalog builder right on the spot, and we can kind of show almost instant results to the users. And that way we can gauge where we are. That saves us 2 days on a very basic catalog, up to maybe a week, depending on the complexity of the workflows.
Absolutely. So let's take a look at what this means in practical reality, right? So when Bill's saying, hey, we can change our process to be able to sort of build these on the fly, usually what customers do, and your own experience might vary slightly, but most of the time, all of the customers we speak with tend to capture catalog item requirements in some sort of standard format. In some cases, they may use Excel, like I'm showing you here. In other cases, they may use a Word document or maybe a ticket in ADO or Jira. But generally speaking, when the business analyst is working with the end users to kind of understand what the catalog request requirements are, they capture the information in a spreadsheet like this. So here you can see we have some metadata about the catalog item. We have information about the various different fields and validation rules. And then there's a workflow detail here related to, the approvals and so on. And this is, I would say, maybe a simple to medium complexity catalog item set of requirements. Now, once these requirements are defined in a standard process, as Bill mentioned, this would be given to a ServiceNow developer, and it could take anywhere from several hours or days to maybe a week to be able to implement and test this within ServiceNow. So with this digital worker that you're seeing here, and let me orient you a little bit. For those of you who weren't on our previous webinar, the digital worker is a web-based application, and it's meant to sort of look and feel a little bit like a large language model like OpenAI. So I can see various chats that I've asked the digital worker to help me with historically on the left. On the bottom, I can start typing. In the middle are various tasks that, based on when I logged in, what I'm able to do. And at the top, you can connect to one or more ServiceNow instances. This is pretty straightforward. You provide the instance information. You can specify whether it's a sandbox development or any other type of environment, and you provide your credentials. These are the user's specific credentials. We use OAuth 2.1 in what's called three-legged mode. So this preserves all of the role-based access controls and permissions that ServiceNow has. So when I'm logged in at this digital worker, I'm logged in as Richard Mendis at Bytemethod.ai. I'm only allowed to use the digital worker to perform tasks that I would be allowed to do if I were logged into ServiceNow. So all of those permissions are retained. Okay. So when it comes to catalog items, I showed you the spreadsheet earlier. I can actually go ahead and select that spreadsheet and upload it into the digital worker. And now it's opening it up and it's looking at it and saying, oh, this is a catalog item. Let me go validate that this format looks okay. And you can see here on the right, it's passed the validation. This is a single catalog item with 12 different variables and 3 workflow tasks. And it's asking me for permission to go ahead and implement this catalog item in our development environment. So I'll go ahead and approve it. And now what the digital worker is doing is what the human would normally take, several hours or several days to do, which is interpret those requirements, go into ServiceNow, and start implementing those requirements within the flow creator and all of those things. But here you can see instead of taking several hours or days, in about 20 seconds, the digital worker has actually created this catalog item with all of the variables and fields and flows. And I can go ahead and open this up in Workflow Studio. And you'll see here, sorry, my login timed out. I'm going to go ahead and log in. And in a few moments, you'll see that it isn't sort of, this digital worker is not doing something that only a machine would understand. It's actually performing the steps that a good ServiceNow developer would do in actually building out this catalog item. So you can see here the entire flow has been built out, including all of the scripts and everything else that goes along with it. So this entire catalog request has been created. I can even open it up if I wanted to in Employee Center and see a preview of that of the form. But we also want to allow you to see these things without having to leave the digital worker. So for example, I could say, show me a preview of what this request form looks like. And if the digital worker understands what I'm asking for here, it'll go ahead and attempt to show me, in this case, a preview of that form with all of the variables and the fields. Okay, so this is a quick example of one area that I think Bill and Vinny are pretty excited about because they actually went through this exercise of rationalizing. I think you had about 150 catalog items that you tried to kind of shrink down. That was before we had the digital worker. But now with a solution like this, you guys would be able to do it a lot faster.
Yeah, Rich, one thing I'll add is about a year ago, Bill was tasked with essentially doing what you just said, rationalizing our current catalog item, making sure it aligned to current workflows, created a great user experience, etc. So we went through an entire overhaul of our employee center. And today because we spend all that time updating the employee center to make it more user friendly, we've been very protective of the amount of catalog items that we're adding to the system because we don't want it to get out of control again. and make sure that it does create a positive user experience. But with this digital worker now, this gives you can actually deploy stuff much faster, test things out that you think might be that you're not sure about, and pilot them quicker. And you could definitely back those things out faster if you feel like, or if you need to make modifications to it using the digital worker very, very quickly, as you just demonstrated. This was done in minutes versus days, or even in some cases weeks, right? Because there's a lot of back and forth between, yeah, gathering the requirements to developing it, reviewing it with the requester, making some final tweaks, deploying that to test, doing UAT, going through that UAT cycle, and then going through our formal change process and deploying it into production. So that can take up to 1 to 2 weeks, depending on, like Bill said, the complexity. This you can do in minutes, and you could actually do it in front of the user and make tweaks on the fly as they're asking you um, what they're looking for in the catalog item. The
Yep.
other thing, which we'll show in a minute, is the ability to analyze these incidents or requests that are coming in, and being able to look at how, maybe opportunities to create new catalog items that we currently don't have, based on the insights that we're able to get through the digital worker. Because those insights now, to give you a little bit of perspective, and I'm sure a lot of people have different configurations of their employee center. But we have, in all of our key departments, we have a general bucket. If someone can't find what they're looking for, they pick the general. And I think by default for ServiceNow, that is that is required for each catalog section. And so with that, a lot of people can't find what they're looking for, so they'll just select the general option or catalog item. And through the insights, we're now able to see what is what users are looking for that we might not have in our catalog, that we could be proactive on. And again, going back to, instead of going out and interviewing all of our employees, what are we missing? What could we be adding for you? We can be proactive in adding those catalog items very quickly through this digital worker, at a much faster pace. And like I said earlier, we could test those, and if they're not working, we can modify or remove if they don't meet the mark.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. Oh,
I'd
go ahead.
also like to add that in my case, I have a team of 4 people running ServiceNow. This effectively gives me back 1/4 of my workforce to do other important things within ServiceNow. Instead of just sitting there building out a single catalog item, they're free to do, everything else that needs to be done on the platform.
Yep, absolutely. And we've heard similar things from other customers. We recently were chatting with a customer who said that 66%, or two-thirds of their time is spent actually maintaining and building catalog items. So it can consume a fair amount of time. Yep. So great use case. Let's take a look at another one, which is around request and incident trend analysis. I think this is, obviously, if you're using ServiceNow for, your standard ITSM tickets and things, there's always insights you're trying to garner from the data that's in ServiceNow. And while you can create reports and, run these and build as many dashboards as you want, getting actual insights from those dashboards is often a bit of a challenge. And so one of the things we've tried to do with the digital worker is make this a little bit more conversational and have the digital worker interpret the data that's in ServiceNow to actually give you insights and recommendations, including, for example, potentially, hey, you need to author a KB article for reducing this volume of tickets. Would you like me to help with that? So let's jump into the demo, and you guys can kind of speak to how you kind of view this capability within Dexian. But let me kick it off by going through and saying, okay, let's analyze ticket trends. I think this by default does 30 days, so I might ask it to pull up some additional information. Let's see what it looks like. So here we go. This is, by the way, this is not against our production database, just to let people know this is against the development environment. So you can see here the data is a little sparse. So let me actually ask it to bring down more data. So let's say for the past 60 days. And let's see what it looks like now. So again, the idea is you can conversationally have the digital worker pull up whatever you'd like, right? And for example, this particular time period, I'm asking for more data. And here you can see it's pulled up with a little bit more richer information. So Bill, do you want to talk to this a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. So the first thing that you see here is the volume comparison. You can quickly tell um, how you're doing for this month, or in this case, the last 60 days, compared to your baseline on both incidents and requests. That's a that is a very quick way to know if something is going on, if things are good, or if things are bad, and get you to really start looking into it.
Yep. The other thing we do, and this is a recent enhancement we made, is we use machine learning to do clustering of tickets to determine whether there are, keywords or topics that are spiking. So we can see here, some of these are going down, some of them are going up, some of them are new. But this level of analysis gives you a little bit more insight, as well as some alerts around certain keywords and things like that. Right now, what's interesting about this is I remember I said this should be conversational or interactive. So you can see here where I pull up charts on breakdowns of incidents and requests, I can actually drill in. So for example, I can click on this services category and ask the digital worker to give me more insights in this particular area. So you can see here, it's generating a bunch of insights on what constitutes 62% of my requests. And I'll scroll up a little bit and we can kind of walk through this and see, Bill or Vinny, what did you think about this when you first saw it?
I mean, this is one of my favorite features of the digital worker, being in the role that I'm in, getting visibility around what is actually going on. Traditionally with ServiceNow, building out dashboards, but looking at lists, going through individual tickets can be a cumbersome task. So the ability, the digital worker giving you the ability to break down some particular areas where there might be issues or areas where you're doing really well in, to be proactive and get ahead of things that might potentially be coming up is huge. What's really nice about this is the insight section and being able to ask the questions, like you said, Rich, and drill into the data even more. I use the suggested prompts a lot, to look at the keywords, to look at where there potentially are things are trending, so that I can get ahead of potential issues that I'm seeing across the IT enterprise, with my respective leaders. So this particular feature is kind of unlimited, as far as what you can do. There's a lot of information here. Yeah, you showed 90 days, but if you wanted to go back to the first of the year and look at how you are doing, you have the ability to do that. So getting away from the traditional dashboards and having to, you know, really scrub through lines and lines of tickets is a way of the past, and this is the way of the future, is being able to ask the questions that you're looking to get answered. And I can get the answers that I need very, very quickly here, which is, I know there's more to come with this, but as far as how you can drill down into the different areas, makes my job a lot easier and saves me a ton of time.
Yep. Thanks, Vinny. And here I've drilled into while you were talking, I just pulled up the database category for incident statistics, and you can see here, to your point, the digital worker is actually trying to, give you insights into the clusters of what's happening, right? So backup failures, replication lag, performance and connectivity. Bill, any area of this that kind of stands out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. A little while back, Vinny asked me to create and set up a service delivery monthly call. So that comes with a dashboard, that comes with a lot of widgets within platform analytics. And like Vinny said, this is the stuff that I can't produce very easily, right? All of that is fairly simple. But when you look at the clustering and you can see multiple issues or multiple tickets based off of single issues, you know exactly where to start looking. Um, Other things that are great on this is you get to see the workload by your teams. Not everybody tracks their teams to that level. So for me, in IT program management, I send this out to my peers for their groups, for their assignment groups, and they can see what their team's doing. They're also able to see tickets on their ages, as you got right there, the oldest open records. Um, that allows you can pinpoint and ask questions to get things done. So the knowledge articles are just fantastic. If you have issues that are fairly simple and a knowledge article can fix it, digital worker will create it for you on the spot.
Yep.
Yeah, while Rich, you're showing that, the one area that I would say we've struggled with is getting our technicians to adopt building out knowledge articles. This makes things a lot easier to be able to take information straight out of the insights and draft up a knowledge article and publish it straight back into ServiceNow with very simple prompting. And even it's already recommended on how to do it in the suggested prompt. So it makes things a lot easier and more streamlined so
Mhm.
that you can find opportunities and hopefully, give that information to your users to reduce your ticket volume based on they're able to solve those problems on their own just based on the knowledge articles that we're providing out there by self-servicing.
Exactly. So the idea here is, again, not just provide you with the insights, but provide you with actual recommendations of what could be done, right, to improve things. So this one's taking a little while. Let me see if I can pull up one that we did earlier. Um, Here's one where it actually, I said author an article for, in this case, resolving connection pool exhaustion. And you can see here it's actually drafted an article looking across multiple incidents where it looks at the actual notes, what the resolution was. It might be able to take additional context from information that you've given it about this particular issue. And actually, it actually attempts to draft an article that would hopefully reduce tickets like this in the future, right? So you're going all the way from analysis to insights to recommendations and actions. Okay. So just to recap on this one, what would normally have taken maybe several hours per report or creating follow-up actions, we're sort of shrinking down to a series of conversations that could take maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes, depending on what type of insights you're trying to get to. And then the idea is if you find a flow within the digital worker that you like that works pretty well, we're creating the concept of a shift where you can actually schedule the digital worker to run that on some sort of periodic basis.
Rich, one thing to bring up that I can't go unnoticed is that when you get into ServiceNow and you start going through, dashboards or lists, you eventually give up. It's very hard. It's hard to go through all that data, analyze really where the problems are, instead outside of extracting it and doing some analysis outside of the system. This puts a lot of power in your hands to be able to really see what's going on, which we've never had before. So it's for me as an IT leader, it's a little bit of a different paradigm shift of like, what types of questions, what types of problems am I looking to solve, and asking those questions through the digital worker to see what responses it's giving to me so that I can help my leadership team with directing their team and where they should be focusing their efforts so that we can be, I keep using the term proactive. I'm trying to be as, proactive as possible to avoid outages, avoid issues to the field and avoid that disruption.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, that was a good recap. Let's do one more use case. I think this was an interesting one that we actually built for Bill and team, where we find, some customers tell us that it's very time consuming to continuously optimize their usage of license and do compliance checks and see where, all of these licenses are being consumed and whether users are utilizing them properly. Most companies only do audits once a year if they're lucky to be able to, analyze their user roles and usage across all of them. I know you guys have encountered this as a challenge. Maybe you can speak to it while I hop into the demo. Um, oh, and
Sure.
by the way, just to finish this off, you can see here it completed that last knowledge article on database connection pooling. So that's good to see. So yeah, let me bring up what you guys can talk to this while I do the demo in terms of kind of what you've encountered from a role analysis perspective.
Yeah, so we've been with ServiceNow for 2.5 years, and I was not expecting the level of compliance from ServiceNow as it relates to user licenses and how difficult that was to manage. Their compliance team, over the past couple of years, we spent a lot of time, going back to dashboards, building our own internal dashboards to stay ahead of our license usage. And again, as I mentioned to you earlier, we use ITSM, SPM, and LSD, which is the legal service delivery module, and ensuring that we're in compliance across all three of those modules. And so, I always felt like we were completely reactive to the compliance team sending us their monthly compliance report and then trying to dissect that compliance report to understand why their data was so far off from what we had built in our reports. To the extent that Bill and I have met on several occasions with their compliance teams, with their compliance experts, to really have them show us how, what's the difference between the reports that we built to the reports you're sending us so we can stay ahead of it.
Mhm.
Ultimately, what we're trying to do is make sure we're staying in compliance, and if we are over, then ultimately we may need to go and purchase additional licenses depending on those different areas. But in a lot of cases, Bill and his team spend a lot of time evaluating the the existing licenses to see where we could potentially reallocate those licenses for those non-users, so we can reduce the cost and not have to go out and spend more money on the licensing with ServiceNow. So there was a lot of time and efforts spent in the past couple of years on trying to dissect the reporting to what we had to make sure and put a lot of strain on Bill's team to make sure we're staying on top of this so that we are not caught by surprise with the compliance team to be out of compliance and then have to true up on those licenses.
Yep, exactly. So in this case, I've actually picked one user, Brian King, and I think Bill, you like this report where it actually shows you more insights into what they're actually doing with the license.
Yes, I really do. Can you go to license structure, Rich?
Yeah.
So the first thing on this is it shows you what roles Brian, in this case, has and how they roll up to a larger paid license group. So in this case here, we've got all of these that roll up into IT service management, which is your idle license.
Mhm.
And then the lower you have your CSM. Um, and then strategic SPM Pro below that. So
Yep.
Rich, if you could just go to the entitlement activity for me.
Mhm.
So when we initially started discussing this and what would really help me out, and keep in mind, I've been with the company for 2 years. ServiceNow as a platform was here for a couple of years prior to my showing up. I really didn't have any idea on how they issued roles and groups to different people previously. So I'm coming in blind. What this allows me to now do is I can go in and I can see everything that Brian is using. Not only is his last login was 520 in this case, but I can see that he doesn't use change management. He doesn't use incident knowledge, problem request, or service catalog. So he doesn't need an ITIL license, and that gives me the option to reclaim it and use it for somebody else.
Yep. Now, this is just one user. We could also come back and say, hey, show me the same information for all users, let's say within the IT service desk group. And the digital worker, again, will go back into ServiceNow and make the appropriate API calls to retrieve not just this one user, but all the users across that particular group and show you the same entitlement and license structure information. So in this case, obviously, it's taking a little bit longer, but the idea is that now you can come and see the distribution of licenses across an entire group, down to the same thing as Bill mentioned earlier, the license structure. But now all of these 15 users, and you can get more information as you can see here. Unlike Brian, this particular user, Alberta, um, was assigned an incident, but not updated yet, and she was a requester of the request management. So unlike Brian, who only logged in, this user is actually having things assigned to her, or she's requesting items.
I don't think that I'm alone in saying this, but I think a lot of us platform owners for ServiceNow or IT departments kind of get the same question over and over from specific groups, where they just want more people to have licenses. And it seems like they're always asking for additional people in their teams to get licenses. This allows us to take a look at that and see if they're actually using those licenses to kind of cut back and measure that as needed.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, and I would say the old way is you have to go into ServiceNow, you have to look at the users, you got to look at their last login information, and it's not as intuitive as this, where it summarizes it all in one place, gives you all the details, and for you, Bill, you can make decisions very, very quickly on a user and whether or not they need a license or not, and can reclaim and reallocate that out to a different user. So you can see over time, this can be a huge cost savings, not having to go out and buy additional license, especially if you're capped out on your license count. You have the ability to quickly pivot, find unused license, reclaim them, and reassign them.
Yep, exactly.
The other
Super.
thing, the other thing I'll add to this, Rich, sorry,
Yep.
was just around, you know, as you mentioned earlier, we're building this out. We're providing you guys feedback on things that will work and don't work for us. But one of the things that I've talked to Bill about is when we get closer to our renewal date, we're definitely going to be using this to determine really truly what do we need for the upcoming renewal as it relates to licenses. Can we reduce our license count because we initially thought we needed X at the previous renewal? And now we can maybe reduce that based on inactivity on users and
Yep.
say drop from 300 to 250 because we found 50 users that are actually not using those ITIL licenses. And maybe even if we need to transition that cost to another place within
Yep.
ServiceNow, we can, or just do a straight cost saving exercise for the organization as well.
Exactly. I mean, ServiceNow is continuously coming out with new modules. You want to always take advantage of it, but budget doesn't always increase. So if you can find ways to reallocate that budget within your subscription, that's certainly helpful.
And
Absolutely.
and 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 what Bill said doesn't it does is it sometimes can be a difficult conversation with a particular leader within a group where they're typically leaders are reaching out to Bill and saying,
Yeah.
"Hey, I need this person to have a license." And then, it may take him time. In the past, it would have taken him time to do a little bit of research to really say, your person really doesn't need it. They haven't used
Right.
it in, 6 months, whatever the time frame is. Now he can quickly pivot and say, really need this license. Your users, these three users you haven't used it in the last 90 days. I'm going to
Yep.
reclaim those. If down the road you need to, give them a license, but we need to reallocate those to a different group and be able to stay within the boundaries of what your existing contract is.
Yeah,
Exactly. And we've even had requests of customers to say, hey, can you periodically notify, right, certain managers about users who may not be utilizing these licenses? Yeah. Sorry, Bill, you were going to say something.
I was going to say, yeah, to Vinny's point, the way I'd have to do it previously is I'd have to just go through and look up every request and every incident that would have been assigned to each user to see
Mhm.
how often they're doing it. And that is a big task.
Yep.
The other thing around the compliance team, Rich, is we find that as you get closer to the end of the year, you get closer to the end of their fiscal years, or you get close to the end of the quarters, is typically when you hear from them. And then it puts our teams in panic mode, and having to be reactive. This allows us to be much more proactive. That's why we built the initial dashboards, was to try to get ahead of this. Now this gives a lot more information where I can almost see as we continue to use this that is a non-issue for us with the compliance team, and we can focus on the things that matter versus worrying about
Yeah.
whether or not we have overages in a particular time frame.
Yep. Absolutely. Awesome. Well, that brings us to the next section of the webinar, where you guys had a good view into kind of how Bill and Vinny are utilizing the solution and where they're seeing benefits. I know usually there's many questions around architecture, so let me cover this briefly. Of course, we could do a whole separate webinar topic just on this, but the way that the ServiceNow digital worker is built, the areas that are kind of gray on the top left here, this is where during sort of onboarding of the digital worker, we provided some context. So for example, being able to understand that catalog item requirements spreadsheet format, providing additional context around the naming conventions, the best practices that Dexian likes to follow, and all of those things are provided during the onboarding time. And then at runtime, which is the blue components here, when you have a developer on Bill's team or on our team on behalf of customers using the digital worker, and they ask it to, for example, analyze and build a catalog item based on the spreadsheet, it has all of that context. It can interpret that spreadsheet. It uses a large language model to do some analysis and map to the appropriate APIs using our own proprietary MCP server. That server hits ServiceNow APIs directly, or if customers want, it can consume Now Assist, performs the action, gets information back, and that information is organized and presented by a large language model visually for easy digestion by that user. We have customers that are very sensitive around the data that's in ServiceNow, public sector, healthcare, financial services, et cetera. So we've taken a very conservative security posture with respect to the digital worker. So for example, we don't persist any data outside of ServiceNow. You can even control whether that history is preserved. We use role-based access controls so that you can only do with the digital worker what you'd be allowed to do as a user within ServiceNow. We host the digital worker securely in our AWS infrastructure, but if a customer wants to leverage their own Azure instance, for example, or Google Cloud or what have you, or maybe even deploy on-premise, we have the ability to take a containerized version of the digital worker and help customers deploy it on-premise. We even have flexibility in terms of swapping out large language models. So we're not doing any proprietary training of the models on customer data. These are straight off-the-shelf large language models we're using. And if you want to swap out because you have an AI governance council that's say standardized on say Anthropic or OpenAI or what have you, we can swap models out so that we can leverage what your organization has deemed permissible for use. Okay. In terms of how we work with other AI capabilities within ServiceNow, all the demos we showed you is our digital worker hitting the APIs of ServiceNow directly. We can consume Now Assist skills as well. So if we have a customer that wants to leverage their assist capabilities and there's a specific task that they want the digital worker to use those Now Assists for, we can certainly do that. We are also going to be pushing data and telemetry to AI Control Tower. So if you've deployed AI Control Tower, you're managing the digital worker like you would any other agent. But ultimately, whether you're using just the digital worker's capabilities or more broadly the digital worker with the ServiceNow AI capabilities, our ultimate goal is to help reduce that cost and ownership of ServiceNow and get you faster time to value. Okay. In terms of kind of where we're headed from here, I'll cover some areas, but I would love to hear, Bill and Vinny, now that you've been using this, not for a long time, but for a short while at least, what you kind of see as areas you'd like to have us improve the digital worker in.
You want to go first, Bill?
Sure. Yeah. So things on my roadmap really involved our CMDB. So I definitely want to get more involved with the CMDB and the health of my CMDB. One of the things that I'd like to have the team start using is the configuration item builder. So although we do use discovery tools for the majority of our CIs, there are also always standalone applications that we have to add by hand. So we're going to start using the CI builder for our CMDB. Another thing that's on my roadmap in the future coming up is we don't have a great solution for IT asset management. And it is something that I'm very interested in building out. So I'm going to be looking to leverage the digital worker heavily to build out an IT asset management.
Mhm. Yep. So on the CMDB side, yeah, I think we've discussed this with with you, Bill, before. That's something we support today, in terms of running health checks and finding orphan duplicates and stale CIs. And you could have the digital worker, in fact, go and, perform more analysis and investigation on specific areas. So that's certainly something we'll be working with you on. Creating CIs, that's another interesting one as well. So yeah, looking forward to working with you on that. That's certainly an area that we see the digital worker going deeper into based on your feedback and as well as other customers. Yeah. Vinny, any perspective from you?
Yeah, I would say the one area that I'm interested in seeing more functionality around is around SPM, which is the strategic portfolio management. We use this a lot, whether it be agile, project management, demand management, etc. From an executive leadership standpoint, we're doing a lot with strategic priorities. We're doing a lot with strategic plans and quarterly goals. So we leverage that capability. We also on the back end do a lot with demand management that roll into either enhancements or projects. So having more visibility around, similar to how you were showing the the incident and request trend analysis, the ability to be able to dig in, ask questions about specific demands, how that aligns to uh, our strategic priorities will help give more visibility around making sure we're prioritizing things right. Right now, it's a lot of clicking around in the system to find that information. So to be able to quickly ask the LLM questions around those specific items will be a game changer for us.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. I think we'll continue to make investments in those areas for sure.
One
The
other
other,
thing, one other thing, Rich,
yeah,
is sorry. The last one is I got to get my wish list out. So
yeah, please.
let me give you the last one. Just, I mentioned, the three modules that we have today, ITSM, SPM, and LSD, but support of implementation of new modules would be huge as well, so that we're not as reliant on ServiceNow partners to help us implement those. So if down the road we want to implement CSM or another platform within or another module within the platform, we could hopefully do that all through the digital worker and not have those large costs that come with working with a partner and even the time frame it takes to implement. In the past, to implement some of those modules, it was 3 to 6 months depending on the specific module that we've selected.
Yep, absolutely. And while I'm finishing up the last couple slides here, just a reminder, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to drop it into the Q&A or the chat, and we'll get to it. Or if you have wish lists on what you'd love to see this do. So that was a good point Vinny made about, implementing modules. The demos that we showed you are sort of very task-focused areas. They're important areas that save time, but what customers are really asking us to do as well is explore whether the digital worker can actually perform longer or more complex work streams, actually implementing new modules. And that's something that we are working on along with our consultants, is to at least start by, an implementation questionnaire that sort of, asks some basic questions and can get a module up and running very quickly. The other thing we've heard is the concept of shifts, where if there's a task that you really like what the digital worker does, but you want to run that task periodically, say every week or every month, like the license compliance, maybe, every quarter, Vinny and Bill would like a kind of assessment of where, the license usage is allowing the digital worker to kind of scheduling a shift and run that on a periodic basis. Multi-application scenarios has come up. So in theory, we can connect to any application, not just ServiceNow. So for example, I know Vinny and team are implementing Salesforce, right? And so if there's a task that maybe spans multiple applications like ServiceNow and Salesforce, that's an area that we're also exploring, for either synchronization of data or tasks that span multiple systems. And then finally, the demonstration I showed you was digital worker running as a standalone web application. We're also in the process of looking at putting a subset of the digital worker as a scoped app that you can install right from within the ServiceNow App Store, and possibly exposing some of these capabilities as skills that you can consume within Now Assist, in addition to support for AI Control Tower. So these are all the things on our roadmap. Most common are things like what Vinny and Bill are asking for, where they want specific tasks, and we're opportunistic there, and we continuously prioritize based on what our customers are asking for. But certainly, we're very excited about the potential of where this could go. Okay. So in terms of next steps, would love to have discussions with anyone on the call who would like a deeper demo with their teams or to ask more questions. Exclusive to webinar attendees is we offer a $0 POC in areas that we support. So if you want to try this out and do a pilot around, say, catalog item development or knowledge articles or something like that, we'd be happy to support that. You can just reach out to me via my contact information here, and we'll of course send a replay of this webinar to everyone so you have all this information, including there's a link here to a digital room where we have all of our past webinars and other collateral and other information if you'd like to see the previous webinars, including this replay. Okay, so with that, I'll open it up. We have a few minutes to address any questions. Again, feel free to submit them. One question, Bill, for you is, I know you have a pretty lean team. What are some of the top areas you feel this might kind of help your team in terms of time savings? Is it primarily the catalog items or any other areas that you're thinking of?
Yeah, it's definitely the catalog items. My whole team supports all of the other fulfillers within the company to do their jobs and support the rest of the company, which is their customers. So the face of that and the employee experience of that is really the bread and butter for my team working. So being able to just use the digital worker to create a catalog just is time savings for me.
Yep. And then, Vinny, in terms of, SPM, because you mentioned that before, is it the insights that around the data that you're most interested in there?
I am, yeah. So we have a pretty structured demand management process. So and with that, there's a lot that comes on the kind of the top end of the funnel, right? And so having the ability to be able to prioritize, look at our prioritization and how that aligns to our strategic priorities is critical. And right now, it's a lot of mapping and relying on the users to be able to do that. Being able to get insights into where, right now, again, going back to the traditional ServiceNow views, it's looking at lists and looking through things that have been approved and why they were approved and looking through descriptions. So having the ability to gain insights into those demands that are coming in can really help steer and make sure that we're focused on the things that matter the most to the business, that are going to move the needle versus just requests that are coming in from the business that are maybe self-fulfilling versus best for the company.
Yep. Makes sense. We had a question come in that asked about whether you'll be able to share this webinar replay. Absolutely. You'll get, in a day or two here, we'll send you the replay and you'll be able to share that amongst your organization or even outside it. Last question is, in terms of security, this is one that comes up often. People ask about where is this hosted and what do we do with the data? So by default, we host the digital worker in a secure AWS infrastructure. But as I mentioned, this entire solution can be deployed via Docker container in your own infrastructure. So all that information can be private in your cloud. This additional context information, again, can also be saved securely in your infrastructure. We do not persist any ServiceNow data outside of ServiceNow. So any information that we read is temporarily read for providing analysis or insights or what have you. And that history can be purged so that all of that data is gone at the end of the session. So yeah, it's completely secure from that perspective, and you can, from a data retention perspective, decide what and for how long that data is you want persisted. Okay. Is the digital what? No other question here. Is the digital worker available out of the box with the latest release, or does it require additional cost licensing? No, it doesn't. So first, two things. So it doesn't require any additional licensing from ServiceNow. We license the digital worker. There's a cost for that, but it's priced to be very competitive in terms of relative to the value that it provides. So it's about, half the price of an entry-level ServiceNow offshore developer. It gives you plenty of return on investment. Does not require any additional licenses. It will work against whatever the standard APIs that, for the modules that you have within ServiceNow. In terms of releases, we support the current release and the previous one. So much like ServiceNow, so when we upgrade to Australia, it'll support Australia and the previous version. Okay. And I think we're just at time. If there's any other questions, feel free to reach out. I really appreciate everyone taking the time to join us today. And Bill and Vinny, thank you so much for sharing your experience. I know the team, Brian and others, are eager to continue working with you. So appreciate you making the time today.
Thanks, Rich. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Rich.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.